Hi everyone, Jill Hicks here at Recruiting 101. Today's video that you're watching is called How to Get Recruited to the Ivy Leagues or Stanford. Now, I'm not going to limit just my discussion on the Ivy Leagues and Stanford, but I'm going to be adding in some info on some of the other schools as well. But a lot of it's similar information in terms of what they require and how to get to that point where you are a recruitable athlete to those types of teams. So obviously we are talking about the cream of the crop in terms of level of academics in the United States that have these schools that also have women's gymnastics. But let me share with you, first of all, some of the other schools, too, that I think need to also be remembered because they're also very strong academically. And those are schools like GW, which is George Washington. There's William and Mary. There's Penn State. There's Maryland, Cal Berkeley, UNC, which is University of North Carolina. There's Towson, Temple, Rutgers. So there's lots of schools. We are so fortunate in women's gymnastics that we have so many strong academic colleges that also have women's gymnastics. So I'm going to detail out the Ivy Leagues in Stanford and GW today. But keep in mind that I think a lot of the information applies to all these schools. And the biggest part that I want you to remember in all this is these schools, you typically have to meet their minimum requirement academically to be a part of their university and team. They don't have as much wiggle room to help athletes get into their universities. They're expecting these gymnasts to fulfill the requirements of admissions. So that's the difference. Some of the state schools are going to have lower academic requirements, obviously, and the ability to get girls in maybe under the radar of the admissions requirements. Whereas these schools, it's not going to be that way. And that's the biggest difference. And that's why it's so important that you know from the get-go, if this is the path for your daughter, or you as the gymnast, then you really want to be aware of this information, especially some of them by freshman year. Okay, so let's get started. Some of the things we're going to talk about today are what does it take in general to get into these schools? And then I'm going to break it down more specifically. But in general, GPA, obviously very important, a 3.8 and above. SATs, 1300s and above. ACT, 30 and above. And obviously taking a lot of AP and honors courses, if not most of your courses need to be those. All right. It's important to note that it's the requirement to get into these schools is going to be a little bit different for each school, and I'm going to be giving you general terms. So I don't want you to take this information and say to the college coach, Jill told us my daughter only needed this to get into this school. I'm going to give you general information. And the other thing is this kind of information can change every year. So keep that in mind. Don't quote me on every single thing. And I did send out emails to the coaches and ask for this information, but I think it makes them nervous too, that I'm putting this information out there in specific terms when they know it's more general. So keep that in mind as we go through this information. Nothing is set in stone, and but hopefully it'll give you good guidelines. All right, so let's start with Stanford. What does it take to typically get recruited to Stanford? Well, the one big thing about it is out of all the academic, stronger, rigorous universities that have gymnastics, I would say this school can tend to be ranked higher in gymnastics. So they're going to want the higher level gymnast as well as the academic admission requirements. So they're recruiting, as you know, some of the Olympians and some of the elites. But they also have quite a few sprinkled in level 10s. So you don't want to take it off your list, but you need to know your gymnastics level might need to be higher than some of the other schools that have strong academics. George Washington would be the next one that's ranked, top 20 sometimes. So they're going to want the bigger gymnastic skills. All right. So Stanford, here are some of the things that when I talked to the coach that she highlighted that I think are going to be helpful. Stanford has 12 scholarships for athletics. By your daughter's sophomore year, she will want to be on the coach's watch list. By freshman year, they start looking at transcripts, but by the end of sophomore year, they have narrowed down their search. So what that means is when your daughter becomes a freshman in high school and you have looked at her skills and you've looked at their skills and it looks like she's on the right path for gymnastics skills and you know she's going to take very rigorous courses and she's a great student, you're going to want to send emails to Tabitha, who's the head coach there right now, or whoever is the head coach there, because that can always change, but Tabitha is right now. You're going to want to send emails and let her know what your future looks like, because you're not going to have, obviously, the transcripts from high school to give her because you're starting your freshman year, but you're going to want to give her your basics of what you think you'll be taking in high school. And then also you should be, at minimum a strong level 10 to get on her list. Now, currently she has a list of, for example, 6 freshmen that she's identifying. And that just means that those kids have the gymnastic skills. So if you probably would have competed level 10 prior to 9th grade, that's going to give you much, and done well, that's going to give you a much better shot at Stanford in terms of getting on that freshman list. If you're an elite gymnast, junior elite, and that's your daughter's desire is to go to Stanford, she definitely wants to get on Tabitha's watch list, is what she calls it. All right. So let's say your daughter's a junior and she didn't realize that this is what she needed to do. It's okay. I would still have her send her information to Tabitha. You might not get on her watch list because it might be full, but you never know. That watch list just means that Tabitha's watching, doesn't mean that she has all her obvious, grades can't be done. So if one of those on the watch list falls off and your daughter is being tracked by them loosely, not on that tight list, you never know, she could move into one of those slots. So don't give up hope on that. All right. So here's some of the things that Tabitha mentioned. One is she does tell admissions who is on her list, but you still have to get in on your own, basically. So you still have to have what they're going to require. 2, early application is February of the junior year. If they want your daughter, they're going to be watching her freshman, sophomore year. They're going to ask for transcripts. One thing that's really important is if your daughter can take the PSAT at a very young age and do well on it, that's going to be a really good indicator to a school, a strong academic school, that they really are going to feel good about your daughter. So if she scores, a 1,200 on that PSAT her freshman year, then she's probably going to score a 1,300 at minimum when she takes it later on down the road. Let's see. So if all goes well and your daughter's on the watch list and your daughter starts sending her PSATs, her transcripts freshman, sophomore year, then there's an 80%, then they'll turn her information in. Like I said, early application would be February of her junior year. And then if all goes well, your daughter would receive back a letter from the university saying that they're 80% sure that she'll get in. And that would come the summer before or the summer after her junior year. So that's how Stanford works. Then you'd get that letter, and then you turn in the senior transcripts to get the final, or probably just the fall of senior year, to get that final, yes, you're in. As long as you take what you're supposed to the spring term of the senior year. So that's pretty much how Stanford works. Now, here's some more information. Your daughter can also be considered for what's called a walk-on to Stanford. Now, these would be girls who might not be a strong all-arounder, might not ever have been elite, might not never have made it to JO Nationals, but your daughter is strong, as those girls are, on maybe one or two events. So Tabitha recommended that you would apply on your own. Your daughter would apply just like regular students. And then you would let her know that your daughter has applied, and she will look at all the candidates that are in that same boat, who are gymnasts who want to be walk-ons. And then she would decide if they're strong enough on one event minimum to be a part of the team. And once your daughter gets in, then Tabitha would let you know, yes, your daughter can walk on to the Stanford team. So that's kind of how the walk-on piece works. So the girls I was speaking of earlier, where she's got them on a watch list, their freshman year, sophomore year, those girls are typically the ones that she's going to look at for the athletic scholarships. All right, so that's a little bit of how that part works. With Stanford, they do not, so if your daughter gets in, they don't want money to ever be the reason your daughter wouldn't go there. That's a university philosophy. So she was saying that if parents make less than $65,000 a year, they have this great option where your daughter can be a walk-on, but not have to pay for Stanford's tuition, fees, books, room, and board. So basically, if you're in that category of making $65,000 or less, and your daughter gets in, and she could be considered for the scholarship athletically or for the walk-on position, she might actually be eligible for this other scholarship that Stanford offers. And it's actually worth, she said, more money than the athletic scholarship. So that she would walk you through. I'm not going to go into all those details, but there's even not only money for tuition, fees, books, room, and board for kids whose parents are underneath $65,000, but your daughter would get travel money to go home and come back. So who would have thought? Very unique how Stanford is. But basically Stanford, or Tabitha said, she's looking for the whole package in her athletes. She wants girls who are willing to work hard and continue to improve in gymnastics and obviously school. She said a big proponent of what she looks for is girls who realize they could fail classes, which when you think about it, most students who are on the track to go to an Ivy League school or a Stanford school, they probably never struggled. I mean, they've worked really hard to get their A's, but they've probably never failed classes. And she said that can happen at Stanford, and that some girls can handle that really well and some girls don't. And so she's really looking for that personality that isn't going to fall apart when they have to go through that struggle at Stanford. So she's going to be watching for things in your daughter probably when she's recruiting her, to show her that your daughter has the strength to handle that. Now, of course, it's going to be devastating and it's going to be hard, and that's to be expected. But I think if your daughter puts so much pressure on herself to get straight A's, for example, and has never struggled, then you're just definitely going to have to prep her for Stanford. That it could be that it doesn't look the same way as life has always been in high school. Most kids like that are the number one student in each class, or ranked very high at their high school. And then all of a sudden they get put with all these kids who are like that. We don't want them to drop down into a deep tank of depression at a school like that. We want them to be able to manage that. So you're going to want to have those conversations as she goes through high school. How would you manage that? What would it look like? It's okay to struggle. It's okay to get a B. Things like that are really important, Tabitha said, for what she looks for in an athlete. All right. Obviously, let's see. Tabitha's trying to build a culture on her team. She wants to win championships. So her goal is not only to have these great students at school, but she wants them to excel also in the gym. And she wants Stanford to win championships. I love that. I think that's so great that it's not just one or the other, but she's really there to win at the NCAAs. So keep that in mind, but she's building champions, she said, for life. That's so awesome. And the cool part about Tabitha that I really love is that she went to Stanford. So she knows, she's experienced, and she was an elite gymnast. So she has all that personal experience that I'm sure she pours into her team. So the other thing she mentioned was freshman and sophomore year does not hold as much weight as the junior and senior year. So that's interesting. You have to keep up the academic rigors all the way through. So you can't, start getting recruited by Stanford and feel like you can back off. You won't get in, she said. So very important. All right. So that's the basics of Stanford. Aside from the obvious that essays are really important. Your daughter will have to write an essay at Stanford to get in. And my understanding is that they're looking for the whole person, the admissions. When they look over all of applications, the essay becomes really important because everybody's good at school. So they want to know, who are you as a person when you write that essay? What have you experienced in life that you're going to bring to the classroom? And my understanding is they want you to write essays for all these schools that are personal, that are something you struggled in but overcame. So it can be about gymnastics, or it can be something else completely different. I know my daughter got recruited to Stanford, and my daughters also did. They went to orphanages and worked in Africa and Russia, and those were the experiences. Now, my one daughter who got recruited for soccer didn't go down the application route. She ended up, that wasn't going to be her choice. But I was always thinking as a parent, talking with her, wow, that would be such a great thing to write about, was your experience at Stanford. So, your experience going to orphanages and what that meant to you. So anything outside maybe of the box that your daughter has experienced, it could be a family member that's gone through something difficult, an illness that they watch them work through. And it could be, they were adopted and what that was like. It could be volunteer work that they do. Again, all those things are important in these types of schools to be competitive in the application process. Okay, we're going to move on to Ivy Leagues now. We're going to talk about Brown. Once again, these schools are going to want a lot of the same things, but some of the specifics that each coach told me I'm going to share with you. So Brown, the Ivy Leagues are different. They don't have athletic scholarships. It's all need-based financial aid. So there aren't merit scholarships. You can apply for merit scholarships outside of the university and utilize those, but the Ivy Leagues are set up to where it's need-based only. They do have Division I gymnastics. They are ranked lower, so you don't have to be as strong like an elite gymnast to go to an Ivy League. You can be an average level 10 and be recruited to those schools. I actually have a client right now who is a sophomore, and she just went and visited like 3 of the Ivies. And they've told her, I'm pretty sure she's a sophomore, they have told her they want her. So they watched her videos. She went and visited. She went to their camps. And so that's how she was able to talk to them. And I'm trying to think. Actually, she must be a junior because she went and visited and talked to one of them that I'm thinking of. So she's already a junior. So anyway, when she met with them, they had already looked at her videos and told her right there on the spot that they want her on their team. So that's one thing you can think about. And the nice thing about the Ivy Leagues is, yes, you can start sending them your information as a freshman, but they don't really get as serious about making their list till the junior year. So you definitely want to send your information. I would say if you didn't start the recruiting process till your junior year, you're okay. But definitely get them your transcripts, your classes, your test scores and all that. Again, your PSATs really help. So for example, this one client, she had her PSAT scores and they were already over the amount that needed to qualify. So that's probably the reason these Ivy League coaches have all told her, we want you on the team. All right. So they have no athletic scholarships. They want, at Brown, SATs 600s and above, ACTs 30 plus. Their facility, their workout facilities on campus. Oh, and by the way, Stanford is as well. They have their workout facility on campus. And Brown told me their training hours are 20 hours a week. And by the way, most Division I programs are going to work out 20 hours maximum a week because that's the NCAA rule. But some you will see actually work out less. And I just wanted to point that out because some of the Ivies don't work out as much as you would see other Division I programs. But Brown said they do 20 hours a week. They typically recruit level 10s at Brown. AP classes, they want you taking as many as possible, and typically they want more than 4 AP classes. She was saying, I believe in total there. So I would say if your daughter can take AP classes every year, that's ideal, or honors. Class rank, admission does not consider the student class rank at Brown as much. It's not as important. Essay, she said, yes, this is arguably for Brown the most important part of the application. So I recommend that you hire someone for your daughter to help her, if she's not a great writer, to be prepared to, write the essay for all of these schools, because what I'm hearing is the essay is extremely important. So Sarah at Brown encourages her athletes to write about their success and experiences being a top-level gymnast because it will set them apart. So the fact that your daughter's traveling, a part of a team, part of JO Nationals level, and doing really well in school can really set her apart in the application process. What is the recruiting timeline for Brown? Freshman year, she said to start sending your video footage and any academic information that you might have. Sophomore year, the PSAT should be taken. End of the junior year, they ask for transcripts. They begin the pre-read process with chosen gymnasts. The pre-read is not a guarantee that the recruit will get into the university. So here's what the pre-read is. Your daughter would send in her transcripts summer before her after her junior year, summer before senior year. Then they take the transcripts, put them through admissions, and you'll get what's called a pre-read. You can get a red light, green light, or yellow light. So it's obvious. The green light means looks good. Everything on the transcript looks like you could get into this university, but it's not a given. You have to know that. They might even list, be sure you take this, this, and this, and they'll ask for what your senior year is going to look like to make sure that looks good. Yellow light means it's looking good, but you better add this class or that class. And red light means it doesn't look good. So they probably would take you off their list. They typically come up with 5 girls that summer before the senior year that they're going to focus on, I've heard, at the Ivies. But that can change depending on their roster size and how many they're going to take. But if you get through the pre-reads before your senior year and your gymnastics is competitive and at the level needed for that team, then their chances are you're going to do really well in the to get picked down the road. Also, she said July 1 is when the recruit will begin the early reads for financial aid. So that means you'll be turning in information, parents, to the Ivies July 1 of your income. And they'll let you know if it looks like your daughter's going to receive some kind of financial aid. She mentioned that typically a family has to earn less than $100,000 a year to qualify for funds. That was at Brown. All right, Cornell. Cornell, the coach told me SAT scores need to be 700 or better on each half. ACT 30 plus, they do training hours, also 20 hours a week of practice. AP classes, majority of classes junior and senior year should be AP or honors. Rank of school, the admissions does look at your daughter's rank of high school. So you might want to find out what your daughter's high school's ranked. Essay, yes, you have to write an essay, and it's very important. Their recruiting timeline at Cornell, they start looking at athletes in April of the junior year. No early commits before the school does the academic pre-read, July 1 of the junior year. So obviously at their school, they're not allowed to say prior to that time that you're going to be on the team. They expect the coach to do those pre-reads before their senior year, and then they can start being more serious about who they're going to pick. The recruiting, the need-based package, they will match any Ivy League package. So if your daughter applies to Brown and gets a package back saying financial aid is going to be this much, they will match it. I've heard this is pretty standard with all 4 Ivies. So that's really nice. Many girls on his team, he said, have campus jobs and summer internships. And they typically recruit level 10s. All right, here's Penn. SAT score 650, ACT, and that's a minimum, ACT 30 and plus, and they also train 20 hours a week. They expect a strong, challenging curriculum, just like all the other schools. Most candidates are identified by junior and senior year. That doesn't mean you're going to be told you are on the team or you've been picked to be on the team. However, I have noticed with Penn that on College Gym Fans, they actually list girls on the younger side that they've made offers to, or for whatever reason they have a list. So I don't know, I didn't ask John how that works, but that's different than what I'm hearing from the other Ivies. So you definitely want to talk to John or the head coach about that. I don't know the answer to that. They will also match those financial aid packages to other Ivies. They recruit strong level 10s, and their roster size is usually 24. And their gym is right on campus, and John said it's state-of-the-art and comes with air conditioning. So that's actually, I've heard their gym is very nice. So that's, something to consider. They do offer a summer camp, whereas Brown and Cornell and Yale, I do not believe they have summer camps or fall clinics. So that's a big difference. Penn has that they can offer. So your daughter can go and get to know John and work out in their facility and meet the other girls. So that can be a great experience. Yale, the coach there said SATs 1350 and plus, ACTs 30 plus, roster size 17, and the facility is also on campus. Training hours are less, 15 to 17 hours a week. Their recruiting timeline is they want you to reach out to the coach as soon as possible, so that would be 9th grade. But by sophomore year, they want to be sure the recruit has taken all the right classes. So they're going to ask for, most of these schools will ask for proof of your PSAT if you've taken it early, and start sending them your transcripts right away. They want to be sure you haven't missed anything that freshman, sophomore year, because it's hard to make that up. So you will be asked to send your transcripts, so you're going to want to get those from your schools if Ivy League's the way you want to go. And then you can email them or have your school maybe send the official one. But just be aware of that. That's a lot different than state schools that girls are applying to. They need those transcripts early. Let's see. Oh, they prefer at Yale brick and mortar. So that just means you're not going to be ruled out if you're homeschooled or online, but she said the applications in admissions are much stronger if you attend a brick and mortar. So going to a public high school, I would assume, or private, where you're actually going to a school to take your classes. Yes, you have to write an essay. She said one of the head coach there, Barb, said that one of the unique things is they get 2 weeks off spring break. And then I think that she said it's the only Ivy that does that. So they still work out if they're in season, which they usually are, she said, but one of the weeks, but they get 2 weeks off of school. All right, so that's Yale. Now we're going to talk about GW. This is George Washington. They GPA 375, unweighted and above, honors and AP courses, ACT 28 plus, SAT 1300 plus. They do have 12 scholarships and 18 maximum on their team. The coach will not commit to anyone until she has met you face to face. Oh, and by the way, the Ivies don't always have the recruiting budget to come and visit you. So if you don't get a visit directly in your gym, your club gym, from an Ivy school, don't panic. That's normal. They do a lot of their recruiting locally. They'll go to high-tech camps and things like that, but they don't necessarily. Now, I've seen Sarah come out to California, so I have seen that, and I think John does that too sometimes. So occasionally, yes, they will, but it's not always going to happen. So they'll do more wanting you to come to them, and of course, sending your videos. Now, with GW and Stanford, because the gymnastics has to be at a higher level, they're going to want you to come to their camps for sure. They're going to want to see your gymnastics. They're going to want to work with you. So that's a little different. Camp, she said, is very important at GW, and they often have one June or July. They want to see that early PSAT. They talk to walk-ons the end of the junior year. Facility is downtown, so you're going to get in a car to go to practice for GW, and it's at a club, so that's something to keep in mind. Some girls doesn't bother, some girls don't like that, so that's really a preference, and they have a lot of girls who are pre-med at their school. All right, so that's the information about the Ivy Leagues and Stanford and a few of the stronger academic schools that have gymnastics. So I just was going to share a little bit about two of my athletes that I have a lot of girls at the Ivies. I have a lot of girls, or a couple girls on the Stanford watch list right now. And I just want to encourage you. One of my girls, who I believe is a junior at Yale right now, you know, she always desired to be at one of the Ivies, but she didn't know which one. And I thought what was really neat was her mom took her, I want to say the summer before her junior year, to a whole visit where they actually took 2 weeks, and they went to the Ivy Leagues and got on the campuses. You know what? It might have been her junior. No, it was before that new rule. That's why. Yeah, it was before the rule where you can't be on a campus anymore and talk to college coaches till you're a junior. So I can't remember though, but she took 2 weeks, went to 3 to 4 or 3 of the Ivies for sure that she knew she was interested in. And boy, she knew once she got on campus with Yale, that was her dream. So she pursued it. And what was neat was they fell into the category of the financial aid piece. And so she is there fully funded, and she loves it. I talked to her mom recently. You know, they've gone through some changes in coaches, and that's been challenging for the girls for sure, but the academic side of it has just been better than she could have ever expected. So she loves the campus, she loves the size, she loves her major there, and she's managing and doing well. She had an injury, actually, didn't compete at all, I believe her freshman year, had to come back and rehab, and made the lineup and is doing well. All right, and my other athlete, like I said, is on the watch list with Stanford, and what I love about that is Tabitha is a really, really good communicator. And what I've noticed is if your daughter gets on the watch list, Tabitha's going to set up times to talk to your daughter either once a month or every few weeks. Your daughter will be calling her and going over how things are going, and she will often send her assistant coach out to watch practice, and she likes to create a really strong relationship with her athletes that way. So that's what I'm seeing she's doing right now with some of my girls on the watch list. So last but not least, I just wanted to share a quick checkoff list in review of what we've discussed. So take your PSAT early if you can. Take as many AP and honors courses or IB classes if your school offers it. Make sure you have 3 to 4 years of a second language. I forgot to mention that, but it is often not required at a whole bunch of colleges. You only have to do 2, but for these stronger academic schools, 3 to 4 years is going to make you more competitive. Make sure you get in your volunteer hours. So I know that's hard to do with your gymnastics schedule and your school schedule. So be creative and start looking into things in your community or things you can be doing that's going to set you apart in whatever you choose to volunteer at. And then prep for those essays, meaning I would hire someone for your daughters to help them learn how to write an essay for that level of admissions that's going to be required. All right, so those are my tips for getting recruited to Ivy Leagues, stronger academic schools, and in particular Stanford and George Washington. Thanks for joining me here at Recruiting 101.